Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, it's pretty crazy to have been following One Piece for as long as I have and been part of the community for as long as I have, and to finally be at a point in the story where it's like, you know what, it's gonna end soon. On one hand, I'm excited to see how it ends, on the other, I don't want it to end. But at the point of making this video, we have over 1,000 chapters of One Piece, delivering time and again incredible experiences, and this feels like a good time to talk about the best of the best. Top 10 greatest moments in One Piece. I'm sure you guys already know, but there is no way to objectively do this video. It is entirely biased based on my personal experience, my opinion. So go ahead and leave a comment below how your list would differ from mine. And just so you guys are aware, yes, this video is about the 10 greatest moments in One Piece, but we're going to talk about quite a few more than that. But before we get into that, I want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is a free-to-play, turn-based, hero collector MMORPG, available on both mobile and PC. Not gonna lie, I'm really excited for this one because this is the first time that I'm doing this promotion that I actually feel like I might be an expert. It's taken a while. But yeah, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Raid Shadow Legends is absolutely one of the best hero collectors out there, period. If you're patient, you don't have to spend any money, there's over 600 collectible heroes, and they go all in on the designs. You then just gotta figure out what to do with them once you have them to beat the content, which is not easy, but is also rewarding. But that's the special thing about Raid is, whenever you first heard about the game or if you played it before, it is always changing, always getting bigger and badder. Recently, they've added an entirely new faction to the game, the Sylvan Watchers, which provides them just another theme to work with in order to generate amazing heroes. Seriously, look at this and tell me that this is not awesome. A person is literally carved into the shield. The details get me every time. But for new players just joining the game or for old hats who want to restart, you can enjoy a special Valentine's Day themed adventure with Raid Love Quest. All you need to do to get involved is download Raid Shadow Legends from the links below, copy your in-game player ID, and then head to raidlovequest.polarium.com. Play one of the Valentine's themed mini-games for a chance to win some fantastic in-game and real-life prizes, including a Valentine's Day themed Raid Champions and even Amazon gift cards worth up to $1,000. And if you already have an existing Raid account, use the special promo code STValentine23. Everyone can use this to get a small Valentine's Day gift from Raid to you. But if that's not enough, new players, use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack with this cool in-game loot. But seriously guys, this is a great time to join the game. I've been playing for near on a year now, and I really do love it. And we could have a big long conversation about it if there was time for it. But you guys came here for One Piece, so let's get into it. Let's not beat around the bush and begin with number 10. There are a million flashbacks that you could potentially include in this list, and it would make sense to. I think that flashbacks are some of the strongest elements of One Piece, period. A lot of people say that there's rules, like it's bad writing if you include flashbacks. Nah, man. Oda brings the fire every time. But this video isn't the 10 best flashbacks in One Piece, it's the 10 greatest moments, and I know that I have to include one flashback, and I really want to include the one which was probably the moment that I first fell in love with One Piece. What I'm talking about here is Arlong Park, Nami's flashback, the moment Bellamy dies. Look man, Arlong pulling the trigger here was one of the most brutal moments in all of One Piece. It was also one of the most emotionally just wham. That's a technical term. But as with most things, probably everything on this list, what came before the setup for it makes a world of difference. Nami wasn't Belmir's daughter, Nami was found by Belmir, and because of this it makes her question whether or not that is actually her mother. It's just one of those integral themes with One Piece, your biological family is not your only family. Sometimes they're not your family at all. But Nami was a selfish brat, there was things that she wanted, that she thought that she needed, that Belmir could not provide her. New clothes, for instance. But of course Nami knew the truth that Belmir was just doing the best that she could. But probably more important here was the fact that Belmir fed and did all of these things for Nami at the expense of herself. The kids got to eat, Mom maybe not. So Arlong arrives and Nami is torn in two directions. One, she's actually unhappy. Two, she wants Belmir to be happy. This causes a fight. A fight Nami probably regretted for the rest of her life. Because it wasn't long after this that Belmir proved that she loved her children even if they weren't her actual biological daughters. And she realized under no circumstance could she ever disown them, even if it was for her own protection. Then she spoke her heart and died. This isn't a list of the top 10 saddest moments in One Piece, right? So we're going to switch up the emotions a little bit because, it's not just the best because it hits the hardest in one particular way. So number 9 on my list is Gear 5th Luffy. Kind of like before we were talking about there's a bunch of different flashbacks that you could include on this list, at the same time, there are a number of power-ups. Gear 2nd stands on its own, the same with Gear 4th, even frickin' Nightmare Luffy, okay? It's all cool. But if I had to pick one that I think is the best in the entire story, and no jokes whatsoever, I'm picking Gear 5th. So how do I explain this with words? Well, Oda is a master of setting up the pivotal power-up that's needed. I think you guys know, most have probably experienced this, just the anticipation, you kind of know it's coming because it's being foreshadowed, and then the hype when you see it through the freaking roof. I think that Oda nails this every single time. But for me, there's a couple things which separate Gear 5th from the others. You can legitimately debate whether or not Gear 5th is the most creative moment in the entire story. I don't want to parse it out. I'm just saying you could make an argument, even further than that, okay? You could make an argument that this is one of the most creative things in mainstream shonen manga, period. Big conversation, I feel comfortable saying it. Oda's hammered in throughout the course of the story before this moment important themes, right? Like, have the courage to face your fears, embrace the struggle and smile. And at the same time, we had a conversation within the community about this, about Luffy not really changing. He's just this carefree, joyous boy going on an adventure, right? And all these things are happening. It's like, dude, grow, learn from these. Take everything more seriously. You will need to if you realistically want to survive. And while this conversation was happening, Oda laughed. Because people forgot the point of One Piece was to make you laugh. And the hero of the adventure embodied these ideals. Oda, in effect, twisted this conversation on its head. It's not the most serious, the most careful that's going to win. It's going to be the person that confronts every danger imaginable the most. And through talent, fate, fortune, and sheer determination, survived it all and allowed it to make him stronger. But to reach this point, there was something very crucial that this character needed. He needed the strength to never stop smiling, thereby never losing the passion to continue forward. And so when we got it and Luffy began to demonstrate his powers, this feeling, this wowed, essentially, because of just utter genius. It puts Gear 5th on another level. All the love in the world to all the other gears, all the other power-ups in the story, but nothing wowed me quite like Gear 5th. But I know that this is going to be controversial. I imagine a lot of people are going to have this actually higher. A lot of people are going to have this lower because they think the silliness, they don't want the silliness in One Piece. To you, I say, you're wrong, but okay. Oof, man, I'm expecting some comments. Following Gear 5th Luffy with this scene probably will make some people feel a certain way. But you gotta remember, this is not an objective list of the best moments in One Piece. This is my experience, based on how I emotionally felt when they happened. And while Gear 5th is really flashy, there's a really simple scene which impacted me around the same level, I think just a tiny bit more. What I'm talking about here is when Luffy left the fist print on the side of Bellamy's head. I think that it's important to characterize the journey up until this point in time. Luffy was just this nobody kid at pretty much every stage of the adventure. Everyone looked down on him, they didn't think too much about him, and we'd just come off the biggest arc up until that point in time where Luffy finally defeated somebody truly noteworthy, and the government covered it up. In every way except for one. They gave Luffy a pretty sizable bounty. At this point, Luffy's defeated what we considered to be a top tier of the world. We knew that he was legit. Everyone else did not. So just like before, what happened before is very important to set the moment, to allow us to appreciate it to its full extent. And most of Jaya was very frustrating, because we knew that Luffy was incredibly strong, yet Oda purposefully wrote it in such a way so that Luffy would not actually fight. I think that you can still have a discussion or debate about why Luffy didn't fight Bellamy in the bar. But I like to think that if Luffy fought back, he would have acknowledged this as an actual duel, a fight. Maybe the thought is that acknowledging Bellamy justifies in some small way his position, his argument. In Luffy's mind, the battle was already won. There was no need to fight. And in retrospect, few characters in the entire story have taken as large of an L as Bellamy did in that moment. Either way, what is definitely true is that they were never really in any danger, and Luffy only fights when there's something worth fighting for. So the scene built up fans' frustration and anticipation for Luffy to once again prove himself definitively. And after Bellamy had attacked Luffy's innocent friend and stolen his treasure, he got the reason he needed. What ensued was, in my opinion, the greatest flex in all of One Piece. Bellamy built the fight up as if it would be child's play, and he was taken down with one singular punch. Honestly, a lot of people might compare this to Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon. Maybe you prefer that. There's definitely things about each that are different and distinct that could be subjectively better. But yeah, for me, no singular punch in the entire story hit harder than that one. You guys already know that I'm partial to a bit of backstabbing. Traders love it. Anybody who's followed me over the years knows this for a fact. So of course my list includes one example of an epic betrayal from the story. There are several to choose from, but I think that you guys probably already know what this one is. The reveal of Galley Law members being CP9. What's funny is that this made the cut, but it's not because I was so emotionally invested in the characters. In this way, you could argue, for instance, Kanjuro's betrayal was better. But no betrayal was more shocking and at the same time as hype. 1. We had literally just seen these people dead. 2. It introduced an incredible new faction. 3. It complicated the questions that surrounded Robin leaving the crew. And lastly, the aliases existed and were justified because the government was searching for clues, and specifically an object related to the Void Sentry. All of this added up in one singular moment, blew my freaking mind. Pretty much. But yeah, in terms of just like more emotional betrayal, shout out to Squardo, man. That was really close. I think that the feeling of hopelessness is as powerful an emotion as pretty much anything else. It's also really not a strength of One Piece at all. We spend the majority of our time very hopeful. Luffy will always figure out a way. That is what we're conditioned to think. So when it is broken, we are broken. And no moment encapsulates this more than the separation of the Straw Hat crew. It was brutal in all the right ways. The honest truth is that Luffy was progressing in his journey too quickly. We'd already encountered characters whose strength we couldn't even imagine being at their level yet. And up until that point in the story, we had been able to avoid them. Luffy had been pressing the government's buttons for a while, but finally he crossed the line. He punched a Celestial Dragon. Immediately followed was the arrival of an Admiral, and the introduction of an entirely new technology, the Pacifista. And the Straw Hats were simply not ready for this battle. This scene really has it all, and it's really difficult to discuss everything about it that I loved. Watching Luffy lose his crew members one by one was horrifying. It was horrifying even though I knew that they weren't actually dead. Because from the perspective of Luffy, they were. It's crazy because we were just coming off of Thriller Bark, and we got to see Kuma manifest Luffy's pain, and it really puts into perspective, like everything that Luffy does for the crew. To strive for his dreams and protect his friends, Luffy literally kills himself. But through it all, I never felt as if Luffy was actually hurting. This was the first time I felt that way. It was possibly the most human moment that Luffy had had up until this point in the story. Enduring all the physical abuse that he had was nothing compared with losing a crew member. But he didn't just lose one, he lost them all. Like I said before, brutal, gut-wrenching, there was mystery with Kuma and the Pacifista. It was intriguing because we knew that they weren't dead, but we didn't know what would happen after that. It set up the story that followed. It was incredible. One of the consistent joys in this story, for the vast majority of it at the very least, was the excitement and anticipation of a new crew member. Oda set it up from the very beginning that Luffy was on his own but can't really take care of himself. He needs crew members. He speculated 10 of them. All we knew is that there was vital functions that were necessary. And so we went through the story and progressively picked up people. You guys are One Piece fans. I don't think that you need me to explain why this is something that you look forward to. But are you guys ready for the twist? Not a single crew member joining the crew makes my top 10 list. Don't get me wrong, I love them all. This isn't like the only 10 moments of One Piece that I enjoy, right? So if we were just talking about every moment from One Piece that I love, the list would be very long. But yeah, no one joining falls in the top 10. Number 5 is actually a moment where someone didn't join. Let me explain to you in many words why Yamato is the worst character in the series. Kidding! I'm kidding. Just a joke. Vivi. Got you there for a second though. I really don't know how to describe this. I mean, I can tell you, look, I bawled my eyes out, okay? That's just what it was. But what complicates it so much is I've never felt so happy to be wrong. And we all knew at this point, I'm sure, maybe some people didn't, Vivi was joining the crew. A lot of people at the time didn't like Vivi. I was not one of them. I was absolutely sure that she was going to join the crew, and I absolutely thought that I would enjoy it just as much as every crew member joining prior, and even those joining after. I thought it would be of the same level, but it surpassed it. Because Oda is a master wordsmith, and that speech just kicked my ass. I'm not even talking after the fact. We've done a bunch of videos recently analyzing Vivi's speech, applying it to what we know now. The level of foreshadowing there is incredible, but I knew nothing about that at the time, and it mattered not. What I saw was a person who was desperate to join the Strats, who loved everything about that crew, wanted nothing more than to be a pirate and continue the adventure. But she couldn't. She had a responsibility. Possibly one of the greatest demonstrations of strength in the entire series. In my mind, Vivi is, was, and will be a Straw Hat Pirate. I'm honestly not sure if I can explain this any better. You either feel it or you don't, and I felt it. I bet you guys are wondering what's going here. I think that we're at an appropriate place here. Go ahead, pause the video, think about all the greatest scenes in One Piece in your opinion, and try and figure it out. What is JB's number 4? Giving you a second, ... okay? One Piece is an adventure. If you take the adventuring out, it's not One Piece anymore. Likewise, there was just no way that I was going to make a top 10 video and not include something about the adventure within it. Perhaps the only surprising thing is that I'm including something so high. But I believe this with all of my heart, and I spent a good time thinking about it. The 4th greatest moment in One Piece is when Luffy and crew climbed the knock-up stream. Speaking of lesser discussed emotions, the feeling of wonder is real. I honestly feel very sad because I know a lot of people do not experience this. At least not for the same things that I do. I'm just going to go totally off the rail, but for thousands of years, wonder has driven exploration in the real world. The sense that there's things out there to see that no one else has seen before. But we sit at a very awkward period of time where, like everything that exists around us, from on the Earth itself to space, even distant stars, we've seen it all. Or perhaps it's more accurate to say that, where our ships can go currently, they've been there. I feel like someone who is smarter than I am could write a paper about how our society has lost something that previous generations have always had and perhaps taken for granted. So what do we do in troubled times such as these? Well, we escape from reality by inventing a new one. Basically, what I'm arguing is that One Piece is therapy, okay? There was a lot of moments here to consider, even recently in Wano. Perhaps climbing up Reverse Mountain is very near that as well, but for me, nothing really comes close to going up the knock-up stream and discovering the Sky Islands. I feel like I have the same problem here as we had before. How do you explain to people who don't actually understand the feeling of wonder and what that is and why you feel it? I don't even know if it's possible. I don't know, man. The Sky Islands were hype beyond belief. I could not wait to see what was through those clouds. You were on a literal flying ship with wings, navigating air currents next to a giant frickin' water spout. For me, this is the coolest moment in all of One Piece. So we've already established that Oda is a wordsmith and a master of speeches, okay? That's relevant for number 3. While we're here, I want to throw a shout out to recently in Wano with Momonosuke's speech. I kind of feel bad because the majority of this list is pre-time skip stuff, and I don't want to feed into that, but, it's like, I'm just trying to be honest here, but that Momo speech was in the ballpark. Alas, nostalgia is a powerful effect and only grows over time, so you never had a chance. But number 3 isn't just a speech, it's also tied directly into the climactic defeat of a villain. In my opinion, number 3 is the greatest fight conclusion in all of One Piece. The fight that we are talking about is Luffy and Rob Lucci, but the speech was made by Usopp. And I really don't think that you can separate these two things. I think at this point most of you probably understand how I formatted this video to make my decisions. There's a lot of, final battles in One Piece that are great. Almost every single one of them can be dissected to an absurd degree to find sort of hidden meaning. But the list isn't about being great, it's about being the best. So Luffy had already been fighting Rob Lucci for an extended period of time. He'd already dropped his new power-up, which came at the beginning of the fight rather than the end, and They were equals. At the same time, the Straw Hat crew is doing anything and everything to rescue Robin and escape. And it turns out Luffy was strong enough to save them, but not strong enough to save himself. Lucci was just that little bit stronger. And if Luffy wasn't exactly who he was, he would have lost. And if Luffy hadn't chosen to recruit Usopp, he would have lost. It's beautiful because we began this saga in Water 7 with an Usopp and Luffy confrontation, such that we spent the majority of what happens afterwards with Usopp not present. Sogeking, some mysterious dude, just appeared to take his place. And then at the end of the arc, something amazing happened. Usopp appeared, strangely wearing Sogeking's clothes. But the whole conflict centered around, by and large, whether or not Usopp was worthy of being a Straw Hat, and at the end he proved it. Maybe this is controversial, but in my opinion, Luffy had truly given up, or had nothing left to give. But that's the strange thing about willpower. It's not some sort of static number. There's ebb and flow. I kind of wonder whether or not Oda implied Usopp's role on the crew, aside from being a sniper, aside from being a handyman, right? Like what he does for the crew in times of battle more than anything else. He motivates the other Straw Hats, and more importantly here, he motivates Luffy. Because Usopp is in fact weak, and needs to be protected. The whole journey can pretty accurately be summed up as Luffy going from place to place protecting his friends. Along with the pursuit of meat, it is one of the primary things that motivates Luffy. Corny or not, Luffy's Nakama are his treasure, and he'll do anything to protect them, even surpass his limits. Usopp was watching the battle from afar, saw Luffy essentially lose. And then with Luffy in earshot, he challenged Rob Lucci, a battle he could never win, but he was never intending to win, because he knew this fact, and knew if there was any force out there that could get Luffy back onto his feet, it was to protect him, so they could continue the adventure together. And he did it in the only way Usopp knew how. He lied. In this speech, Usopp bared his own soul, at the same time revealing a bit of Luffy's. "This isn't hell. You're not dead yet." Is a really simple phrase that's going to carry with me for the rest of time. And after he said it and we see Luffy in gear second stand up, that moment brought me to my knees. The conclusion thereafter was the best. I think that it's around this time that a lot of people are going to be really mad because this list is not going the way that a lot of people would have predicted beforehand because I cheated. You're probably thinking there's some key things in One Piece that are not on the list. There's probably more than 2 of them, but we only have 2 more actually on the list. Sorry. But I went with numbering these based on themes and kind of lumping things together because I didn't want it to be exactly what you expected. So, number 2 takes us once again back to Arlong Park. Sometimes you just need to ask your friends for help. Honestly, I can make a pretty strong argument that Arlong Park is a top 3 arc in all of One Piece. And a lot of it had to do with the work that Oda did with character, particularly Nami's character. I don't know, man, it's just one of the most compelling things in all of One Piece for me. We've talked a bit about it already on this list through Bellamir's flashback, but Nami had literally seen someone die for her, and she was determined to never let that happen again. Whatever burden she faced was hers alone to bear. That was until Arlong and Oda trapped her. The village that she had fought for so long and so hard to protect were ready to give their lives for no other reason than to release her of her burden. Because they had known all along that she had never betrayed them. And very similar to her, they couldn't watch the person that they love throw away their lives needlessly for someone else's sake. Specifically, Nami never intended to ask the Straw Hats for help. It was a pretty low-key and crucial moment that I think that she fell in love with the Straw Hat crew, the adventure she wanted to continue, and I wonder whether that scared her. When she finally understood who they were and what they would do, she realized that if they found out about Arlong, they would try to help, and she believed they would die. So she ran away, and you could actually argue that this moment where Nami asked for help is actually the moment she really joined the crew. But through the events of the arc and her resisting in every way imaginable, eventually she was trapped and she broke. There was only one way out, one way in which she would get what she wanted. Luffy simply had to win. Her meltdown, taking a knife, stabbing the Arlong Jolly Roger tattooed on her shoulder, visceral pain. Luffy placing the hat on her head as he goes to take care of business, one of the most iconic things in the series period. But I suppose now it's time to ruffle some feathers. I actually lumped this together with several other moments, all of which could probably have made a realistic top 10 moments in the series. It's just simply that Nami's moment for me was the best. I'm talking here, Robin, I want to live, Sanji, I want to return to the crew. All of these moments are very similar to me. Usopp's apology, and I want to acknowledge that, if you put this on your list, duh. But anyway, I think that you guys probably already know what number 1 is, but let's just release the cat from the bag. Deaths are very rare in the story of One Piece, and pretty much any death that you could imagine might potentially make your top 10 list. A regret that I have when making this is I really wanted to include the Going Merry, because that was absolutely one of the greatest experiences in the entire story. The only time that a Straw Hat has died, and no question whatsoever, it's top 5, no question. But we're theming this last one, number 1, on character deaths, and there is one that is better than that. Well, really, there's 2. The death of Whitebeard and Ace. Up until this point, I've explained every single choice in pretty much great detail, explaining it as best as I can. But with this one, there's no need. Whitebeard is the single coolest character in all of One Piece, fight me about it. His death following Ace's still standing up, powerful. This contrasts in a nice way with what happened only a chapter or 2 before then, Ace's own death, which takes everything that I love about Sabaody and turns it up 1,000. Because this time Luffy didn't just lose his treasure so that he could find them again later, it's lost forever. The lesson in all this, as far as I'm concerned, is that sometimes promises can be broken. And it's just killer, man, because all Ace could do in his final moments is tell Luffy how much he mattered to him. A troubled kid who lost his parents before he was conscious just needed somebody to love him. His only regret in life being that he couldn't see Luffy to the end of his journey. But anyway, guys, just the same as Ace, I want to tell you guys, thank you guys for loving me. I know it's been a while since we've had a real One Piece video, and I want to start with a bit of a bang. I know it's been a while since we've done top anything for a long time, but I thought that this was an entertaining video, and I hope that you guys agreed. It's taken a bit of time for me to get back into the swing of things, but I really hope that, from this point onward, we get back to normal. But yeah, tell me what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, Volume 1. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. Volume 2 will be releasing on March 17th, so be excited for that. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.